All right, so are you ready to dive deep into the life and career of one Donald J. Trump?
Oh yeah, always up for a deep dive, especially one as fascinating as this.
This isn't just about the headlines or the presidency. We're going way back to understand how Donald became Trump.
And that's what makes this so interesting, right? We're not just looking at a political career. We're going all the way back using this YouTube video as our guide. It's called History of Donald Trump from a channel called John Coogan.
We're talking the whole journey from a 23-room mansion, chauffeur-driven school days, all the way to the Oval Office.
We're going to unearth some fascinating nuggets along the way,
Oh
folks.
yeah, rags to riches, near bankruptcy, reality TV stardom.
Presidential aspirations, it's a wild ride.
So let's start at the beginning. Donald's upbringing. Privileged, but also pretty pressure-filled, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. You can't ignore the influence of his father, Fred Trump, a successful real estate developer in his own right. Fred instilled this relentless drive in Donald, that be a killer kind of advice.
Wow, yeah, that's intense. It's almost like something out of a movie.
Right. This pressure cooker environment where winning was everything. But it wasn't all just boardrooms and business deals. I mean, remember, Trump got sent to military school,
Oh yeah, what was it for again?
throwing an eraser at a teacher.
Oh, that's right. Doesn't really fit the image of a future president, does it?
Not really, but hey, it speaks to kind of a rebellious streak, right?
You could say that, but hold on, there's more. His
Sure.
yearbook from military school called him a ladies' man.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading that. Almost like foreshadowing, isn't it?
For sure.
Planting those seeds for the persona he'd create later on.
Yeah.
The wealth, the
Yeah,
attraction.
exactly. So those early glimpses into his character, they really help us understand the bigger picture. But you know what's interesting? Even with that tough guy image, Trump thrived at military school.
Really?
Yeah, he was captain. His senior year, excelled at sports.
Ah, adaptable.
It's like he could conquer any environment, even one far from his privileged upbringing.
From military school, it was on to Wharton School of Business, then straight into the family business.
Yeah.
E. Trump and Son. But even with a silver spoon, he wasn't content just riding his father's coattails.
Oh, definitely not. He wanted to make his own mark.
And here's where his savvy understanding of branding really shines. One of his first moves, renaming the company to the Trump Organization.
That's a pretty bold move.
It's subtle but speaks volumes. He's not just Donald the Son anymore.
He's building his own empire.
Exactly.
And he does it with a flair for the dramatic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Moves into a swanky Upper East Side apartment,
Yeah.
hitting the hottest clubs, beautiful woman on his arm always,
He was marketing himself as much as his properties.
a natural showman.
Absolutely. He grasped the power of image right from the start. Real estate media, even later in politics,
Yeah.
it's often perception that wins over reality.
It's all about the image. And speaking of perception, this is when he first tangles with the New York Times. An article accused his company of racial discrimination in housing rentals. Instead of laying low, he goes on the offensive.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Enter Roy Cohn,
Oh boy, that's a name that brings back memories.
the lawyer with a reputation. Let's just say he wasn't afraid to play dirty.
Ruthless, some might say.
They team up and countersue the New York Times for a staggering $100 million.
Wow.
Most lawyers would have advised a quiet settlement. Not Trump, though.
Never one to back down, is he?
It's a pattern we see again and again throughout his career. Never surrender no matter what.
And even though that countersuit failed, the Trump Organization never admitted any wrongdoing.
A win in his mind
Exactly.
reinforces that never surrender attitude, a cornerstone of the Trump persona.
So tell me about some of his early projects. I know he had his eye on some prime New York real estate.
Oh, yeah. He set his sights on the Commodore Hotel, and even more ambitiously, those undeveloped rail yards on the west side.
The rail yards, those become a recurring saga, don't they?
They do. He had this grand vision, a massive development, 20,000 apartments, marinas, the whole shebang.
Classic Trump, always thinking big.
He wouldn't settle for anything less.
And those properties weren't just business opportunities for him. They were symbols, proving grounds to show he could surpass his father.
Become the biggest, the most successful developer in the city.
Exactly, he had something to prove.
He pulled out all the stops. Charming officials holding press conferences, even leveraging his father's political connections.
He was a man on a mission.
He got those development rights for the rail yards, but they proved to be a bit more complicated.
Right, the community pushed back hard. They saw his vision as too grandiose, not in keeping with the neighborhood's character.
It was a major setback for Trump, a defeat he wouldn't soon forget.
And amidst all this, his personal life takes a turn too.
Yeah, he marries Ivana, this glamorous Czech model. lavish ceremony at a church on Fifth Avenue.
Adds a new dimension to his image, doesn't it? Not just a ruthless businessman now, but a family man. A layer of stability, respectability to his persona.
But let's not forget about Trump Tower, perhaps his most iconic project from this period. He dreamed of a tower on Fifth Avenue since he was a kid, saw it as the ultimate symbol of success in New York.
The construction of Trump Tower. That was a pivotal moment, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the transformation from Donald to Trump is complete.
This monument to his ambition right in the heart of Manhattan.
A physical manifestation of his brand.
And to get that site, he was relentless. It was occupied by this luxury department store, Bonwit Teller. He hounded the parent company for years until they caved.
Sounds familiar.
Just like with the rail yards, he faced opposition from the city. But this time he changed tactics.
How so?
He played it smart, emphasized the architectural merits of his plan, got big-name architects on his side.
A calculated move.
And it worked.
So Trump Tower is completed in 1983.
And instantly becomes one of the most recognizable skyscrapers in the city.
He was a major player in real estate, a bona fide celebrity.
The beginning of a decade that was tailor-made for him, the 1980s.
The 80s. All about excess, weren't they? Wealth and ambition were celebrated.
And Trump was perfectly positioned to capitalize on that.
Oh yeah, he was everywhere.
Talk shows, magazine covers. His name was synonymous with success.
The video even mentions people touching him for good luck.
It's wild.
But it gets to the heart of Trump's appeal. He cultivated this image of invincibility, like someone who could bend reality to his will.
The American dream.
The self-made billionaire who defied the odds.
But, as we'll see in the next part of our deep dive, the 1980s were just Act 1. The 90s would bring a harsh reality check, forcing him to face his biggest fear: failure.
Buckle up, folks. It's about to get interesting. Welcome back for part 2 of our Donald Trump deep dive.
Last time we left off with Trump riding high in the 80s, the ultimate symbol of wealth and success.
Right. But the 90s were a different story.
Yeah, talk about a reality check. It's almost like a Greek tragedy, you know?
Yeah.
This larger-than-life figure reaching incredible heights, and then boom, the fall from grace.
It was a classic case of overreach, wouldn't you say?
In what way?
Well, remember, his empire was built on borrowed money. When the economy slowed down, the cracks started to show.
Like a house of cards.
Exactly.
And he poured a ton of money into those casinos in Atlantic City. But the gambling industry took a hit during the recession.
And let's be honest, his lavish lifestyle didn't exactly help.
No, not at all. It all came crashing down. Selling off prized assets, his yacht, his airline, even parts of his beloved Grand Hyatt.
And then there was the divorce from Ivana.
Oh man, that was a tabloid frenzy. The scandal, the affair with Marla Maples, it was all over the news.
It must have been humiliating for him.
Yeah.
Both personally and professionally.
We think.
Think about it. His entire persona was built around being a winner, the deal maker who always came out on top.
Right, the art of the deal.
And suddenly he's facing the prospect of being labeled a loser.
Something he couldn't stomach.
Not at all.
But Trump being Trump, he wasn't going down without a fight. Somehow he managed to claw his way back from the brink.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
Totally reinventing himself and his brand in the process.
This is where we see that comeback kid narrative taking shape. Remember those West Side rail yards? He'd been battling over those for years.
Oh yeah, those were a big deal.
He finally had to let them go. But he negotiated a decent sale.
Always the businessman.
And then there was his book, The Art of the Comeback.
Became a bestseller.
He was spinning the narrative, controlling the message.
It's like he turned his failure into a marketing opportunity.
He was brilliant at that.
But it wasn't just about money for him, right?
No, it was about restoring his image, proving everyone wrong, showing he was still a force to be reckoned with.
He seems to have this unshakable belief in himself, even when things are falling apart.
Right. Almost like he can bend reality to his will.
Or at least convince himself that he can.
That unwavering self-belief, it's almost bordering on delusion at times.
Maybe so, but it's key to understanding his psychology.
Absolutely.
It's what allows him to bounce back from setbacks that would crush most people.
He's like a cat with 9 lives.
So he's back from financial ruin. But he doesn't just quietly return to real estate.
No, he'd gotten a taste of national fame. And he wanted more.
Enter The Apprentice.
Brilliant move, wouldn't you say? It allowed him to reach a whole new audience. Craft this new image for himself. The savvy businessman, the problem solver, the ultimate boss.
Suddenly, he's not just a real estate guy anymore. He's a cultural icon, a reality TV star.
Exactly.
And it's fascinating how he used that platform to build his political capital.
He was testing the waters all along, appearing on political talk shows, even considering a presidential run back in the late 80s.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and remember Ross Perot?
Oh, yeah, another successful businessman who shook up the political landscape.
Exactly. Maybe Trump saw him as a model, someone who proved an outsider could challenge the two-party system.
Interesting. And then there was his brief stint with the Reform Party. He won their California primary in 2000.
Right. But ultimately decided not to run.
Why not?
Well, the video suggests he was afraid of losing. He couldn't bear the thought of being seen as a failure on the national stage.
So it all comes back to that ego.
That deep-seated need to be seen as a winner.
He wasn't going to play a losing hand.
So he put his presidential aspirations on hold. But he never truly disappeared from the public eye.
No, The Apprentice kept him in the spotlight. And the tabloids always had something to say about his lifestyle.
But something else was happening behind the scenes. He was becoming increasingly interested in politics, especially this growing populist movement that was challenging the establishment.
Which brings us to 2011. His speech at CPAC, a pivotal moment in his political evolution.
Oh yeah, that was a big one.
It was a fiery address attacking Obama, pushing those birther conspiracy theories.
That speech was a turning point. It showed he was willing to tap into the anger and resentment that was brewing among a segment of the population.
He really pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable political discourse.
He adopted this aggressive confrontational style.
And it resonated with a certain audience, those who felt ignored by the elites, left behind by economic changes, worried about the direction of the country.
He was tapping into something real, something powerful.
Think of that CPAC speech as a trial run for the 2016 campaign.
The outsider, the disruptor, the one who would tell it like it is.
And shake up the system.
Exactly.
And it worked. After that speech, he was suddenly a top contender for the 2012 Republican nomination.
But he didn't run.
Nope, he was biding his time, watching the political landscape carefully.
The Tea Party movement was gaining momentum. Dissatisfaction with the status quo was growing.
He sensed an opportunity, but he was patient.
Waiting for the right moment to strike.
So while he wasn't officially in the political arena, he was laying the groundwork.
Building his brand, crafting his message, connecting with an audience that felt increasingly disenfranchised.
The seeds of his 2016 victory were sown in those years leading up to his candidacy.
He was carefully cultivating this image. The successful businessman who could fix the country's problems.
And he was mastering the art of using the media to his advantage.
Even when the coverage wasn't flattering.
So, as we head into the final part of our deep dive, we'll see how he finally made his move. Defied all expectations to become the most powerful man in the world. So here we are, the big moment, 2016, the year Trump decides to go all in on his presidential ambitions.
Yeah, it's kind of wild when you think about it. This wasn't some seasoned politician. This was Donald Trump, the outsider, the disruptor, diving headfirst into the most intense political race in the world.
And he did it with that signature Trump flair.
Oh, absolutely.
Announcing his candidacy by descending that escalator in Trump Tower, with
Yeah.
Neil Young's Rockin' in the Free World playing in the background.
Talk about a grand entrance.
It was like he was saying, I'm here to shake things up.
A deliberate choice for sure. He
Sure.
wasn't going to play by the usual rules.
Nope. And you know, his message really struck a chord with certain people.
In what way?
Those who felt ignored by the political elite, those who felt left behind by economic changes. He tapped into that anxiety, that frustration, offered himself as the solution.
His campaign was unconventional, to say the least. Bypassed traditional political strategies. Relying heavily on those massive rallies, social media, of course, and those provocative statements that kept everyone talking.
It was like a reality show playing out on the national stage.
And the media ate it up.
Oh, they couldn't get enough of him. And he knew how to play them.
A master of media manipulation.
Your outrageous tweet, every controversial remark, headlines.
He understood that in today's world, all publicity is good publicity.
He was constantly in the spotlight, loved or hated, and he seemed to relish playing the villain.
Pushing buttons, challenging the norms.
It outraged his critics, but energized his base.
So let's talk about some of his key campaign promises.
Okay.
Build wall on the border with Mexico. Renegotiate trade deals. Make America great again.
It was a message that resonated with voters who felt the country was headed in the wrong direction.
Right, they wanted change.
And then there was the birther issue, repeatedly questioning Barack Obama's birthplace, his legitimacy as president.
A tactic that many condemned as racist and divisive.
It was definitely controversial.
But it also solidified his appeal to a specific segment of the population.
A dark side to his populism, for sure.
Exploiting racial and cultural anxieties to further his agenda.
And those fears can be incredibly powerful motivators for certain voters.
Absolutely.
So the Republican primaries were a wild ride.
Oh, yeah. He went up against some seasoned politicians.
He outmaneuvered them all.
Turned it into a spectacle.
A battle for attention.
And he came out on top.
His opponents didn't know what to do with him.
They tried attacking his lack of experience, his temperament, those controversial statements.
I think seemed to stick.
Like he was Teflon coated.
And his supporters loved that about him.
What did they see in him?
An authentic voice. Someone who wasn't afraid to speak his mind.
Even if it ruffled some feathers.
They were drawn to his outsider status, his brashness, his promise to shake up the system.
Then came the general election. Hillary Clinton, a formidable opponent with decades of experience.
It was a clash of personalities, of ideologies.
A real battle for the soul of America.
Do you remember where you were on election night?
I sure do. It was a nail-biter.
In the end, Trump defied the polls and the pundits, pulled off one of the biggest political upsets in modern history.
It was a stunning victory. A repudiation of the political establishment.
And it really demonstrated the power of populism.
Especially in the age of social media.
Trump's victory was a watershed moment in American politics.
It signaled shift in the electorate, a rejection of traditional norms.
And it highlighted the potency of a new kind of populism.
One that thrives on cultural anxiety, economic grievance, a deep distrust of institutions.
His presidency was tumultuous, to say the least. A roller coaster ride of controversies, scandals, and policy shifts.
But that's a story for another deep dive.
Another day.
What's fascinating, though, is that even though he's no longer in office, the forces that propelled him to power are still very much alive.
The economic anxieties, the cultural divisions, the distrust of institutions.
And haven't gone away.
And that's why this journey through Trump's life and career has been so illuminating.
It's not just about understanding this one man. It's about understanding the forces that shaped him, the forces that continue to shape our political landscape today.
It's given us a lot to think about.
How did someone like Donald Trump rise to the highest office in the land? What does his rise tell us about the state of American democracy?
Those are questions we'll continue to grapple with for years to come.
Big questions indeed.
So there you have it, a deep dive into the making of Donald Trump, a journey that's as fascinating as it is complex and thought-provoking.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.